You were never meant to blend in. You were never meant to walk among the ordinary, to live a life unnoticed, to move without resistance. From the moment you arrived, the air shifted, the energy around you changed, and those who operate in the shadows felt it. They saw something in you that unsettled them, not because you were weak, but because you carried a force they could never tame. They whispered your name in places you've never been, plotted in circles you've never stepped into, convinced themselves they could rewrite your fate. They gathered, they schemed, they sent forces to move against you. But they forgot one thing. Power is not in their hands. Divine justice does not bargain. Every thread they wove in darkness is unraveling under the weight of their own intentions. The tables are turning, the balance is shifting, and you stand untouched. Because they never had the power to break what was built to rise. They thought they could stop you. They thought they could weaken you. They thought they could take what was never theirs. And now, they are watching their own downfall unfold in real time. This is not coincidence. This is not luck. This is order restoring itself. The energy they set in motion is returning to its source. The weapons they forged are falling apart in their own hands. Every force they unleashed has found its rightful target, and it was never you. If your heart overflows with God's blessings, let that love shine. Click the super thank you button and give $20 or more to plant seeds of faith that will impact countless lives. Your generosity reflects His abundance. Be a vessel of His grace and watch His kingdom flourish through you. The architects of their own undoing never see the collapse coming. With unwavering certainty, they laid the foundation, confident in their power to dictate the outcome. They wove their schemes with meticulous precision, certain that fate was bound to their command. Yet, the moment arrived, and the trap they set did not ensnare its intended prey. It turned upon its maker. This is the inescapable design of existence. Those who wield forces they do not comprehend find themselves caught in a cycle they cannot break. They did not merely construct a snare, they forged a reflection. And when they hurled their treachery outward, the glass fractured, sending jagged shards, laced with their own intent, hurtling back toward them. What they conjured now clings to them, unrelenting. The storm they set loose has shifted course, its winds tearing through the corridors of their own minds. The specters they unleashed now coil around their thoughts, whispering with voices that once carried commands, but now plead for silence. This is not coincidence. This is balance, the weight of misused energy returning to its source with unerring accuracy. It was never a single moment, never an immediate reckoning. The shift began as an unseen force pressing against them, a tightening of the air, a shadow at the edge of awareness. They mistook their control for dominion, believing they could twist unseen forces to suit their will. But what they reached for was never meant to be grasped. Darkness does not serve, it consumes. And when they set it upon another, it sought the nearest open door. The descent was gradual. At first, a whisper, a stray thought they mistook for their own. Then an unfamiliar weight in their movements, a foreign inflection in their speech. Their reflection no longer meets them with familiarity. What they believed to be mastery has become possession, and the ruin they prepared for another now paves their own path. For whatever a man sows, that he will also reap. Galatians 6:7. There's a reason the harvest always comes back in full. You can't plant thorns and expect roses. You can't scatter poison and hope for fresh water. What you send out, what you put into motion, always finds its way home. They thought they could rewrite that law, twist the very foundation of divine order to suit their own desires. But truth doesn't negotiate. See, there's an old story about a man who built a dam to control a river. He thought he could force the water to flow the way he wanted, make it serve his will, bend it to his command. But the river was never his to own. It held power older than his plans, stronger than his walls, deeper than his understanding. He didn't realize that every stone he stacked, every channel he forced, was only building pressure until the dam burst, drowning everything in its path, including him. That's exactly what happened here. They stepped into territory that was never theirs. They reached for something they did not understand, thinking they could mold it, shape it, use it like a tool. But power, true, divine power, is not a trophy. It's not a possession. It's a force, a living fire, and it burns clean through the hands of those who were never meant to hold it. They thought they could take it. They thought they could wear it. They thought they could control it. But fire does not care if it was stolen out of arrogance or ignorance. It burns all the same. What they reached for, what they tried to steal, was never just strength. It was never just favor. It was an inheritance, something forged in suffering, in faith, in relentless perseverance, something bound to a purpose beyond what they could even comprehend. And they thought they could have it without the sacrifice. That's why it turned against them. A throne means nothing to someone who hasn't carried the weight of the crown. A sword is just cold steel in the hands of someone who's never known battle. And power is a burden, not a blessing, to those who have never been refined to carry it. The moment they stretched out their hands to claim what was never meant for them, the process of unraveling began. Not quickly, not all at once, but piece by piece. They didn't even realize it at first. A whisper of doubt, a crack in their foundation, a weight settling in their spirit, heavy enough to make their steps slow, their minds restless. It spread, just like a fire, creeping through dry fields, unnoticed until the moment of collapse. They thought they were strong enough to wield it. They thought they could walk the path you've walked without ever taking a single step. But what they failed to understand is this: power without wisdom is self-destruction. Strength without discipline is chaos. And favor without purpose is a curse. The very thing they tried to claim is the thing that has turned against them. The force they thought would make them untouchable is what's unraveling them from the inside out. And now they are left with nothing but the consequences of their own hands, because the fire they lit does not die down. It consumes, it spreads, and it will not be contained. Adversity never sought permission before it arrived. It came unbidden, unrelenting, a tide that tried to erode the foundation beneath your feet. It moved through whispers and treacheries disguised as loyalty, through unseen currents that worked to hinder your path. This was never random. The forces that thrive in shadows do not battle what they already possess. They strike against what eludes their grasp. And you, unshaken, unclaimed, were always beyond their reach. There was something in you that disturbed them, a presence they could not define, yet feared nonetheless. You didn't demand recognition, didn't announce your strength. It was simply there, woven into your very being. That alone was enough to unsettle them. They sought to fracture you, not because you were fragile, but because your ascent was inevitable, because your existence was a disruption to the balance they clung to. Yet they failed to grasp the essence of true endurance. You weren't being undone, you were being honed. Fire did not consume you, It forged you. Every obstacle forced you to sharpen. Every betrayal carved deeper resilience. Each struggle was an affirmation that you were never meant to remain where they hoped to keep you. Now, the same forces that once gathered to see you fall are withdrawing, defeated, not because they changed, but because you refused to. And that is why they can no longer stand in your way. Their mistake was in underestimating the weight of what they set in motion. They assumed they could move unseen, that their words and schemes would never return to them. They didn't recognize the cost of the paths they walked, the dangers of what they invoked. Not all who take up a weapon understand the war they enter. Many were merely instruments, lured into a conflict beyond their comprehension. They were not tacticians, not architects of their own fate. They were only vessels, carrying burdens they mistook for power. They never questioned what they wielded until it clung to them like a shadow that refused to leave. At first, they were emboldened, certain in their actions. They laughed. They conspired, believing themselves untouchable. But nothing comes without a price. And now, the weight of their choices is pressing down, unraveling them, thread by thread. Their own hands betray them. Their own thoughts slip beyond their grasp. The forces they thought they commanded have instead settled into their very bones. Some have already realized it. You see it in their faces, the flicker of unease, the grasping for an escape that will not come. They wish to undo what was done, to rid themselves of what they welcomed. But there is no reversing this. Their struggle was never truly against you. They stood against something far beyond their understanding. And now, in the wreckage of their own making, they are the ones left, pleading. They mistook your endurance for weakness, misread your trials as defeat. They saw the storms you weathered, the losses you bore, the weight of battles that should have broken you. But they never understood. You were never alone. Every move against you met resistance. Every force that rose was answered by something greater. Every time they tried to bring you down, something unseen lifted you higher. Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. James 1:2-3. There's an old story about a tree standing in the middle of a field, battered by every storm that passed through. The wind tried to bend it, the rain tried to drown it, and the weight of the seasons pressed down on its branches. But what no one saw was what was happening beneath the ground. Every storm forced the roots to grow deeper. Every drought made them stretch further. Every struggle, every hardship, every force that tried to tear it down only made it stronger, until one day, that tree was the last thing standing while everything else around it crumbled. That tree is you. They came at you thinking they could shake your foundation. They sent opposition, betrayal, setbacks, thinking it would break you, make you question who you were, weaken your resolve. They thought they could suffocate your strength with obstacles, drown your purpose with distractions, steal your destiny through hardship. But what they didn't understand is that every challenge, every attack, every attempt to pull you under was actually making you stronger. Because you weren't breaking, you were being built. See, some people think power is just handed out, that strength is something you can take, that wisdom is something you can borrow. But the truth is that real power is earned. It's forged in fire. What they meant for your downfall became the very thing that shaped you into something unshakable. Every wound they tried to inflict on you became a mark of resilience. Every attempt to block your path only pushed you into greater clarity. Every time they thought they had you cornered, you found a way through. Because that's what happens when someone is truly called. You don't break, You don't crumble. You don't fold. You transform. They don't realize what they've done. They don't see that every scheme, every storm, every setback was like striking a hammer against steel. It didn't weaken you, it tempered you. They built the fire, but you came out gold. They sent storms, but you learned how to stand in the wind. They tried to tear you down, but all they did was give you the tools to rise even higher. The ones who thought they were taking something from you were actually handing you exactly what you needed. They wanted to see you fail, but all they did was ensure your success. They thought they could wear you out, but all they did was prepare you for the level they will never reach. Because there's a secret they never understood. Only those who endure the storm can claim the reward. Only those who refuse to bow, refuse to be broken, refuse to give up, can carry the kind of strength that doesn't fade. And now, you move differently. You think sharper. You walk taller. The fire that was meant to consume you became the light that guides you. The battles that were meant to wear you down became the training ground for something greater. They thought they could stop you, but they were the ones who set you in motion. This is why you were never meant to fall. This is why no weapon formed against you could ever prosper. This is why, when everything has settled, you will be the one still standing. They wanted the essence of what made you different, but they never grasped its origin. They mistook the external for the internal, believing that what you carried could be taken, that strength was something to be claimed rather than cultivated. But power without foundation collapses. A fool may see the shimmer of the ocean's surface and believe they understand its depths, but they do not know the tides, the currents, the weight of what lies beneath. They reached for something they never trained to hold, mistaking reflection for substance, thinking they could wield what was never meant for their grasp. They chased what they did not comprehend, and now it turns against them. The force they tried to possess is slipping beyond their control, unraveling them thread by thread. They thought they could claim without sacrifice, take without earning, step into what was never forged in them. But power extracts its price. What they underestimated was never just the magnitude of what they pursued. It was the cost they never saw coming. Though now, for a little while, you may have had to suffer grief in all kinds of trials. These have come so that the proven genuineness of your faith, of greater worth than gold, which perishes even though refined by fire, may result in praise, glory, and honor. 1 Peter 1:6-7. There's a story about a blacksmith who spent years forging a blade. He didn't take shortcuts. He didn't rush the process. He knew that true strength required fire, pressure, and time. The steel had to be beaten, shaped, refined, not once, but over and over again, until it became something unbreakable. But one day, a man walked in, saw the finished sword, and thought, "I want that." He reached for it, believing he could claim it as his own, mistaking its weight for something ornamental, its edge for something easily wielded. But the moment he lifted it, he realized this wasn't just a weapon. This was something earned, and what is earned cannot be stolen. That's exactly what happened here. They saw you standing strong, unmoved by the storms, walking through trials that would have crushed them. They saw doors open for you, opportunities flow toward you, the way your presence carried a weight they couldn't explain. And instead of asking, instead of learning, instead of walking their own path, they tried to take. They thought favor was something you could possess without the process. They thought wisdom was something you could wear without the wounds. They thought resilience was something you could mimic without the journey. But power is not a trophy. It is not a title. It is a becoming. What you carry was never handed to you. It was built in silence, through the nights of questioning, through the fires of affliction, through the moments when everything tried to break you but failed. Every scar has a lesson. Every battle has a purpose. Every hardship has refined you in ways they will never comprehend. And that is why it was never theirs to claim. They wanted the results, but not the refinement. They wanted the authority, but not the accountability. They wanted the blessings, but not the burdens. So they reached. They tried to siphon what was never meant for them. But power that is taken, rather than earned, does not sustain. What is built on shortcuts collapses under pressure. What is not honored will never remain. And now, they are left empty-handed, drained by their own greed, weakened by their own shortcuts, because they didn't understand the truth. What is forged in fire cannot be stolen by those who never dared to walk through the flames. And now, as they watch you continue forward, stronger, wiser, unshaken, they realize the price of their own deception. They thought they could take what was never theirs, but all they did was prove one undeniable fact. You are what they will never be. But everyone who hears these words of mine and does not put them into practice is like a foolish man who built his house on sand. Matthew 7:26. There's an old story about a man who wanted a crown, but not the weight that came with it. He saw the gold, the jewels, the glory, and thought, that should be mine. But what he didn't see was the years of battle, the nights of struggle, the sacrifices that shaped the one who truly earned it. So he took the crown, placed it on his own head, and stood before the world as if he had become something greater. But the moment the storms came, the moment the winds howled and the ground shook, the weight of what he stole crushed him, because he had no foundation to hold it. That's exactly what happened here. They thought they could take what was never meant for them. They saw your favor, your strength, the way you carried yourself with a presence they couldn't explain. And instead of growing, instead of learning, instead of walking their own path, they tried to steal it. They reached for what had been cultivated in fire, tested in battle, refined in trials. But they forgot one thing. Power isn't something you can wear like a robe. It's something you become. They wanted the authority without the discipline. They wanted the influence without the responsibility. They wanted the wisdom without the experience. But stolen power is a curse to those who have not earned it. They thought they were taking from you, but in the end, they only drained themselves. They thought they could imitate your strength, but all they did was expose their own weakness. Because what is not built on truth, what is not rooted in something real, always collapses. They took and took, convinced that with enough effort, they could shape themselves into something they were never meant to be. But now, they have nothing. The very thing they tried to possess has slipped through their fingers, dissolving before their eyes like sand through an open palm. And here's the part they never saw coming. While they were busy chasing what you had, you only grew stronger. They thought they were draining you, but all they did was confirm what was already inside of you. They thought they could weaken you, but they only revealed the depth of what you carried. They thought they could strip you of something they never understood, but all they did was prove that it was never theirs to claim. Now they stand in the ruins of their own making. Now they stare at empty hands, wondering where it all went. Now they are learning the hardest lesson of all. What is not honored will always be lost. They built their house on sand, and the storm has come. And while they sink into what they created, you steady, unshaken, unbothered, stand on the rock that was always beneath your feet. True power is never seized. It is cultivated through alignment with something greater than the self. Strength alone is not enough. It demands insight, endurance, and a purpose that stretches beyond personal ambition. What you have carried was never about dominance. It was preparation, each trial shaping you not into one who rules through control, but one who leads through wisdom. Those who opposed you mistook their battle as one against a mere individual, failing to recognize the force they were truly challenging. They misunderstood silence, believing it to be surrender. They misread hardship, assuming it signified defeat. But struggle was never an indication of weakness. It was the forging of something unbreakable. And now, the truth is undeniable. You did not claim power, you became it. Whoever digs a pit will fall into it. If someone rolls a stone, it will roll back on them. Proverbs 26:27. There's a story about a man who built a cage, thinking he could trap something greater than himself. He set the bars, he laid the bait, he locked the door, convinced that he had won. But what he didn't see was that he had built it too well. The moment he turned to celebrate, the lock clicked shut, and he was the one inside. That's exactly what's happening here. They set the trap, but they were the ones who walked into it. They stacked the bricks high, thinking they were boxing you in, never realizing they were closing themselves off. Every scheme, every lie, every whispered plot was another stone on their own foundation of ruin. And now, the weight of it is pressing down. The walls are closing in, and the fire they lit is burning at their feet. They thought they could move unseen. They thought they could manipulate without cost. They thought they could break you without breaking themselves. But there's something they never understood. Everything comes back full circle. You don't get to sow chaos and reap peace. You don't get to plant destruction and harvest blessing. You don't get to spend your days digging graves and expect to walk free. The forces they sent didn't just turn around, they took root. What was meant to hinder you has bound them instead. What was meant to shake your foundation has caused their own to crumble. And now, they are trapped. At first, they thought they were in control. They thought their hands were steady, their plans were sound, their steps calculated. But deception never holds. Illusions do not last. And now, the ground beneath them is shifting. The strings they once pulled have tangled around their own hands. They spent so much time trying to control your outcome that they never saw what was coming for them. It's not revenge. It's not punishment. It's balance. The law that governs all things does not bend for manipulation. The order of the unseen does not cater to human schemes. What they built, they now live in. What they unleashed, they now carry. What they meant for you, they are now drowning in themselves. They laughed while setting the fire, never once imagining they would be the ones to feel the heat. And while they scramble, while they struggle, while they search for a way out, you stand untouched. Because you never needed to fight back. You never needed to seek justice. You never needed to step outside of who you are. The weight of consequence has already done what it was always meant to do. And now, they are left to face what they tried to send your way. There was never a need for retaliation, never a need for intervention. The mere presence of truth was enough to dissolve the lies. And now, they sit within the reality they constructed, ensnared not by your hands, but by their own choices. You were never bound to their fate, never tethered to the battles they sought to drag you into. While they exhausted themselves in a war they could never win, You remained unmoved, untouchable. They sought to extinguish your light, but radiance is not something that can be taken. They wanted to unravel your path, yet destiny does not bend to the will of the unworthy. They attempted to pull you down, and in doing so, only ensured your rise. Justice does not demand recognition. It does not plead to be seen. It moves with precision, restoring what was never truly threatened, realigning what was momentarily disturbed. The scales have shifted. Their own actions have closed in around them. The chaos they once commanded now dictating their every step. They sought to hold power, yet now they stand powerless. They longed for control, yet now they are led by forces they once believed they could manipulate. The story has been written, the order restored, and they are left to contend with what they themselves have set in motion.